One little-known J.R.R. Tolkien gem from 1962 may look like a children's book, but is anything but. High fantasy pioneer J.R.R. Tolkien is known for writing 1937's The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, published in 3 parts between 1954 and 1955. Peter Jackson's The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings trilogies adapted these novels, bringing Tolkien's work to a far wider audience. But there are 2 more Lord of the Rings books that Tolkien actually published in his lifetime. One is a songbook and the other is the 1962 poetry collection, The Adventures of Tom Bombadil. Being a poetry anthology, The Adventures of Tom Bombadil has not received a direct adaptation in the same way as The Hobbit and Lotar, so it is still relatively unknown. That said, Amazon Prime Video's The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power TV show has adapted the Lotar character Tom Bombadil and given him lines that appear in both Lotar and the 1962 anthology. The Adventures of Tom Bombadil is illustrated by Tolkien's friend, Pauline Baynes. While it may be a picture book, The Adventures of Tom Bombadil is full of moments adult enough to rival Morgotha's Ring. The Adventures of Tom Bombadil is just as tragic and raw as The Lord of the Rings. J.R.R. Tolkien's 1962 poetry book is for people of all ages. Baynes' Tolkien-approved pictures illustrate fairy-tale poetry that speaks to both children and adults, in the tradition of ancient folklore. The poems are light-hearted with tragic moments, including the harrowing The Sea Bell. The speaker in this poem travels to a fairy island where he hears voices that are always just out of reach and never reply, and he comes home to find that no one talks to him any more than they did on the fairy island. This manic-depressive adventure makes more sense when understood as Frodo's dream. Frodo was never the same after the War of the Ring, reflecting Tolkien's own experiences of war. In universe, the poem is a Hobbit creation with Frodo's dream scrawled beside it, but it was developed from a poem originally titled Loony. It is probably the best poem in the book, but it may be telling that Tolkien once called it the worst, The Letters of J.R.R. Tolkien. Another rather earthy adventure follows Tom Bombadil and Goldberry all the way to bed after Tom caught Goldberry, held her fast, saying never mind your mother in her pool, there you'll find no lover. The Adventures of Tom Bombadil sheds more light on the Lord of the Rings than you would think. J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings poems are Hobbit lore. Elijah Wood as Frodo in The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. The Adventures of Tom Bombadil is all Hobbit lore, shedding light on Hobbit literary habits and legends. The vast majority of Tolkien's legendarium was given an in-universe explanation for existing and being created, which certainly applies to The Adventures of Tom Bombadil. Later editions of the book clarified in a preface that the poems were a translation from the Red Book of Westmarch. Readers of The Lord of the Rings will be aware of this as the book begun by Bilbo Baggins and finished by Frodo Baggins, Samwise Gamgee, and other hobbits down the line. There is frequent discussion of what constitutes canon in J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings world, but one appeal of The Adventures of Tom Bombadil is that it is undeniably canon, whoever you ask. Written, edited, and published by Tolkien while alive, this poetry anthology is fully Tolkien-approved and is liberated by its format to tell symbolic stories with no details that contradict anything else in the legendarium. The abstraction of the book's poetic format allows some of the most mature stories in the legendarium to blossom, revealing Hobbit life and more in The Lord of the Rings.